So we are in what we call uncharted waters, which basically means we have not been in this situation before. Vice President Harris has been vice president for nearly 4 years, but really doesn't have much of a record. Her favorability ratings have been low. They've been lower than President Trump's, and President Trump has problems with half of the American electorate. So what's going on right now is there is technically an open convention that will be in August. I think August 19th it begins. But the Democrats would like to solidify around one candidate, and that candidate they're going to try to solidify around is Vice President Harris. She's making calls all the time to get all the delegates she can. And as part of America, it would be very hard to replace her at this point of time, both from a fundraising point of view and also that she's a woman and a woman of color. So to replace her would also politically be very difficult for the Democrats. So I think she is the high likelihood that she will be the nominee. And what would her policies be? And that's a big open question, especially regarding foreign policy. No, no. First of all, Kamala Harris is absolutely American. She's as much an American as myself or anybody who's been here since 1776. She happens to have origins from the Caribbean and origins from South Asia and India, and she happens to be a woman. So removing somebody who has those characteristics is something politically very hard to do. Somebody should, however, in my view, be just chosen based upon their merit. And she was a prosecutor in California, an attorney general. She was a short-term a United States senator and a vice president. But again, we don't know what her positions and her track record are. Does she have a good chance? I think it's 50-50. And the reason is President Trump has probably 50% of the American people that want anybody but President Trump based upon his personality and sort of attacking other candidates personally. So I think this is going to be a very close election, just as it would have been with President Biden. But I do want your viewers to hear something very important. President Biden is going to still be the president of the United States for about 5.5 more months. And what that means is there's many foreign policy decisions that are going to be made by President Biden because he is what's called a lame duck president. That means one not running for re-election. So even though Trump and Harris, one of them will be elected in November, President Biden will still be making all the decisions until January 25th, 2025. It most certainly will affect it. We don't know how much it will affect it because we really don't have a history of what could be President Harris's policies. But let's break it down issue by issue. She had been critical of human rights issues regarding Turkey and human rights issues with Saudi Arabia. She was supportive, as was the Biden administration, in supporting Ukraine against Russia, where she may not be totally online with President Biden. President Biden was considered strong in the support of the U.S.-Israel relationship for American national security interests and shared values. She has come out to be somewhat more sympathetic to the Palestinian humanitarian situation and seems to be somewhat more critical of Israel. But we don't know if is really her policy. Most people think what you see with President Biden today is what you will see with President Harris going forward, but you really don't know. And by the way, President Biden, for your close neighbor, Iran, has not been forceful. He has not been enforcing sanctions against their sale of oil to China or India, for that matter. And that has been supplying Iran with tens of billions of dollars to support insurgencies, especially Hezbollah, Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and the Houthis. Will President Harris change that? I think she should, but we really don't know. There will be a fair and free election. America has a very vital, strong democratic process. And whoever wins in November, I hope they win by a good margin. So there's no questions about the who is the winner. But whether it's President Trump or President Harris, we will have a fair election based upon our democracy. If we look back to President Truman, when President Roosevelt died during the end of World War II, he was never elected as president. He was considered a weak vice president, but yet he was the one who made the decisions of dropping the atomic bombs that led to the victory over Japan and ending the war in Europe. So vice presidents who are not well known sometimes can set a legacy for the future. But the democratic process here in the United States, despite what you hear, is still very, very strong.